Good evening, and welcome to my lair. Thank you once again for joining me as we go on another journey tonight. The topic for tonight is the architecture of ancient Egypt. Most are familiar with the pyramids or the Sphinx, but there are many more fascinating structures for us to explore. Before we begin, please adjust yourself to a position that you find comfortable. Let go of the tension that has been building up in your neck and shoulders. Take a deep breath. Hold it and release. Feel free to close your eyes at any time the need for sleep overwhelms you. There will be images accompanying my voice, but not necessary to enjoy the experience. And now, let us begin our journey. Spanning over 3 millennia, the architecture of ancient Egypt has brought us some of the most iconic structures in history and was a civilization of constant change, which was reflected in their diverse building styles, which are predominantly featured in each of the 5 major periods of ancient Egypt. These periods were the Predynastic Period, the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and the Ptolemaic Period. For almost 30 centuries from its unification in the Predynastic Period to its conquest by Alexander the Great, Egypt was the preeminent civilization in the Mediterranean world. Egypt's majesty has long enchanted archaeologists and historians, creating a field of study on its own, Egyptology. Most of what is known of ancient Egypt was gathered from the many monuments, objects, and artifacts collected at archaeological sites. These were covered in hieroglyphics that were deciphered with the help of the Rosetta Stone that was recovered during the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt. Our first period is the Predynastic Period. During Predynastic Egypt, 2 separate kingdoms were established near the Fertile Crescent. The Fertile Crescent is an area home to some of the world's oldest civilizations. The 2 separate kingdoms were the Red Land to the north, based in the Nile River Delta, and the White Land in the south. The land in the north is known as Lower Egypt, while the land in the south is Upper Egypt. For centuries, Upper and Lower Egypt were 2 separate social and political entities, divided by the many branches of the Nile River and its surrounding delta plains. The historical record of the unification is murky and filled with inconsistencies, half-truths, and possible legends. Most accounts point to King Menes unifying the 2 areas, most likely through military force. Menes consolidated his rule over both upper and lower regions by erecting a new capital city named Memphis, right along the border between the 2 previously separated locales. Ancient symbolic depictions of this unification portray Upper Egypt as a reed of papyrus and Lower Egypt as a Nile water lily, often bound together by each plant's lower tendrils. He adopted the skent, a double crown that was both red and white, and represented a unified Egypt. Starting in the Predynastic era and continuing into later dynasties, the ancient Egyptians developed increasingly complex and effective methods for preserving and protecting the bodies of the dead. The first tomb structure which the Egyptians developed was the mastaba, composed of mud bricks made from soil along the Nile. Mastaba means bench in Arabic. The above-ground structure of a mastaba is rectangular in shape, with inward sloping sides and a flat roof. The exterior building materials were initially bricks made of the sun-dried mud readily available from the Nile River. Even after more durable materials such as stone came into use, all but the most important monumental structures were built from mud bricks. Mastabas were often about 4 times as long as they were wide, and many rose to at least 10 meters in height. They were oriented north to south, which the Egyptians believed was essential for access to the afterlife. The above-ground structure had a space for a small offering chapel, equipped with a false door. Even after pharaohs began to construct pyramids for their tombs in the 3rd dynasty, members of the nobility continued to be buried in mastaba tombs. This is especially evident on the Giza Plateau, where at least 150 mastaba tombs have been constructed alongside the pyramids. The 2 principal building materials were mud brick and stone. Mud brick remained the domestic material, used even for royal palaces. It was also used for fortresses, the great walls of temple precincts and towns, and for subsidiary buildings in temple complexes. The second period was the Old Kingdom. During the Old Kingdom, Egyptians perfected mastabas, and they became the basis of the first pyramid, the tomb for Djoser. It began as a mastaba and was gradually expanded to become a step pyramid by putting one mastaba over another. It was built within a vast enclosure on a commanding site at Saqqara, the necropolis overlooking the city of Memphis. Djoser's pyramid is made of 6 steps. His stepped pyramid was designed by the architect Imhotep, and he is the earliest architect that we know of by name. Apart from the pyramid being used for a tomb, it was also used for the Heb-Sed festival, one of the oldest feasts of ancient Egypt. Celebrated by the king after 30 years of rule, and repeated every 3 years thereafter. The festival was in the nature of a jubilee, and it is believed that the ceremonies represented a ritual reenactment of the unification of Egypt. The king first presented offerings to a series of gods, and then was crowned, first with the white crown of Upper Egypt, and then with the red crown of Lower Egypt. Finally, the king, dressed in a short kilt with an animal's tail in back, ran a ritual course 4 times, and was then carried away in a great procession to visit the chapels of the gods of Upper and Lower Egypt. Following Djoser, pharaohs planned greater tombs to surpass the glory of the new stepped pyramid. Not all attempts to build new pyramids were successful. For example, a pyramid built during the reign of Pharaoh Snefru has a lower section that inclines at 54 degrees and a top section that inclines at 43 degrees. It is named the Bent Pyramid because of the resulting off-center appearance. Archaeologists think that the builders had to change their tactics mid-construction in order to make up a more stable pyramid. However, during Snefru's reign, Egyptians did perfect pyramid construction when they built the Red Pyramid. The Red Pyramid is known as the first true pyramid because of its smooth sides, square base, and geometric measurements. The Red Pyramid is named for the rusty reddish hue of its red limestone stones, and it is also the third largest Egyptian pyramid after those of Khufu and Khafre at Giza. The largest Egyptian pyramid is known as the Great Pyramid. It was built in honor of Pharaoh Khufu, the son of Snefru. It is the height of a 30-story modern building. Although this pyramid was meant to be Khufu's tomb, his body was never found there. The inside of the tomb has passageways and 3 chambers: an underground chamber, the Queen's chamber in the middle, and the corbelled Grand Gallery, which leads into the King's chamber at the top. The King's chamber is built entirely of granite, with 5 relieving compartments, which are empty rooms for reducing the pressure above. Egyptologists believe this amazing structure was built in less than 30 years. The core is formed of huge limestone blocks, once covered by a casing of dressed limestone. There were 2 principal types of temples built in ancient Egypt. The first type is called a cultus temple and was built to house a specific god or gods. The second type is called a mortuary temple and was built to worship a dead pharaoh. We will discuss the cultus temple when we get to the Valley of the Kings later in our journey. The mortuary temple and valley temples were included in the pyramid complex of the Old and Middle Kingdoms. The so-called valley temple stood at the lower end of the causeway that led up to the pyramid. The valley temple of Khafre's pyramid, known as the Granite Temple, had a monumental T-shaped hall along the walls of which were ranged seated statues of the king. The floor was of alabaster, and the roof supported by monolithic pillars of red granite. The Pyramid of Khafre is the second tallest and second largest. Given the organization of the pyramids and the Sphinx, some scholars believe there may have been a celestial purpose to the Great Sphinx and temple complex. That is, to resurrect the soul of the pharaoh Khafre by channeling the power of the sun and other gods. The Great Sphinx is perhaps the largest statue in the world, made from a monolith or single piece of stone. The Pyramid of Menkaure is the smallest of the 3 main pyramids of Giza, but not the 3rd largest pyramid as we mentioned earlier. On the south side of the Menkaure pyramid, there are 3 smaller pyramids. The American archaeologist George Andrew Reisner speculated that the structures were likely tombs for the queens of Menkaure. The archaeologist Mark Leoner argues that Pyramid G3A has a layout akin to a Ka pyramid, which would have housed a statue of the king rather than a body. The fact that the structure once contained a pink granite sarcophagus, however, has led scholars to speculate that it may have been reused as a queen's burial tomb. Contrary to popular belief, the pyramids were not built by slaves. Slaves only started appearing in the New Kingdom, and most of these slaves were from foreign lands, not Egyptians. The pyramids were most likely built by farmers and other specialized workers during the off-season when the Nile was flooded. The pyramids actually have 8 sides, not 4. There is a small indent on each of the sides. It is believed to be an optical illusion to make the sides look more flat and crisp. The third period we will visit is the Middle Kingdom. During the Middle Kingdom, the architecture of ancient Egypt reflected the need to keep tombs safe from thieves. During this period, Egyptian pharaohs tried to outsmart the thieves by building tombs in the limestone cliffs overlooking the Nile. Among columns, rooms and chapels, organized in a maze-like layout, the archaeological site at Beni Hassan hid 39 tombs that were cut out of the rock. Rock-cut tombs were both difficult to access from the outside and easy to get lost and trapped in once inside. The tomb of Khnumhotep is an outstanding example of fine design, impeccably executed. In the main chamber, there is an autobiography of Khnumhotep. It begins to the left of the entrance to the shrine and runs counterclockwise around the walls of the main chamber, ending to the right of the doorway leading to the shrine. The main types of information included are about the actions of Khnumhotep performed during his lifetime, his family and their lives, as well as the close relationship of his family to the royal house, Khnumhotep's excellent character, and his request to visitors that offerings are made to him. On the west wall of the chamber are scenes showing mainly the preparations for the funeral and the resurrection of Khnumhotep. This is exemplified by the boat voyages, making a connection between Khnumhotep and the god Osiris. The wall collectively ensures the tomb owner of rebirth in the afterlife, where he will be sustained through cult activities. On the eastern end of the north wall, there is a large-scale standing figure of Khnumhotep II, receiving offerings primarily of several types of animals and birds. What makes this tomb stand out among the 39 large rock-cut tombs at Beni Hassan is the well-known scene of the Amu group, Asiatic nomadic traders who are sometimes considered Hyksos, or at least they're foreigners. The group, led by a man called Absha, was bringing offerings to the deceased. The west end of the wall has another large-scale figure of Khnumhotep II, only here he is facing right and using a bow to hunt in the desert, which is on the edge of the Egyptian world, the boundary between order, Ma'at, and chaos. It has been interpreted that in this scene, Khnumhotep is assuming the role of the king, dominating over the chaotic power of the desert. And now we move to one of the most decorated periods, the New Kingdom. During the New Kingdom, the wish to halt the looting and desecration of royal tombs led to a new sight. They hid their tombs in the bases of mountains and hills, in a remote valley at Thebes, dominated by a peak that itself resembled a pyramid, called the Valley of the Kings. These tombs were not pyramids, but temples. The most famous belonged to the boy king, King Tutankhamun. The Valley of the Kings is also home to several ancient temples, including the temples at Luxor and Karnak. Both temples were built to honor Amun-Ra, the king of the Egyptian gods, and whose worship bordered on monotheism. These are the cultist temples I mentioned earlier. These temples were designed to be a linear experience, with a typical temple having the following layout: an avenue lined with sphinx or ram statues, leading up to an obelisk on each side, just before the pylon. Most ancient Egyptians never saw past the pylon and obelisk, as the general public was not allowed inside. Next is the hypostyle hall, an open area without a roof surrounded by pillars. After that came the hypostyle court, which is an interior space whose roof rests on pillars or columns. The word means literally under pillars, and the design allows for the construction of large spaces without the need for arches. And finally came the sanctuary of the barge, which was only meant for priests, where they would perform certain rituals honoring the dead pharaohs. To honor the gods and their own accomplishments, many pharaohs added new construction to the temples over time, so that some complexes became enormous. The great precinct of the Temple of Karnak contains whole buildings, or parts of buildings, dating from the early 18th dynasty down to the Roman period. The earliest royal tombs in the Valley of Kings were entirely hidden from view. Those of the Ramesside period are marked only by a doorway carved in the rock face. They had no identical plan, but most consisted of a series of corridors opening out at intervals to form rooms and ending in a large burial chamber deep in the mountain, where the massive granite sarcophagus rested on the floor. Religious and funerary hieroglyphic text and pictures covered the walls of the tombs from end to end. The longest and deepest of all the New Kingdom royal tombs is that of Seti I, second king of the 19th dynasty, which stretched into the mountain and contains a spectacular burial chamber, the barrel-shaped roof of which represents the vault of heaven. His son, Ramses II, known as the Great Builder, also added many astounding monuments. The most remarkable monument of Ramses II is undoubtedly the temple dedicated to the sun gods Amun-Ra and Ra at Abu Simbel. Although excavated from the living rock, the structure generally follows the plan of the usual Egyptian temple. 4 colossal seated statues emerge from the cliff face, 2 on either side of the entrance to the main temple. Carved around their feet are small figures representing Ramses' children, his queen Nefertari and his mother Mutui. 3 consecutive halls extend into the cliff, decorated with more colossal statues of the king, here disguised as Osiris, god of the underworld, and with painted scenes of Ramses' purported victory at the Battle of Kadesh. The Battle of Kadesh was a major battle between the Egyptians under Ramses II and the Hittites under Muwatallis in Syria, southwest of Hims on the Orontes River. In one of the world's largest chariot battles, Pharaoh Ramses II sought to wrest Syria from the Hittites and recapture the Hittite-held city of Kadesh. There was a day of carnage as some 5,000 chariots charged into the fray, but no outright victor. The battle led to the world's first recorded peace treaty. A final interesting fact about his tomb is that on 2 days of the year, February 22nd and October 22nd, the first rays of the morning sun penetrate the whole length of the temple and illuminate the shrine in its innermost sanctuary. Next, we have the temple of Hatshepsut. It is dedicated to Amun and Hatshepsut. It is considered as one of the most impressive monuments of ancient Egypt and is comparable to classical Greek and Roman architecture. The building was modeled after the mortuary temple of Mentuhotep II, which is situated right next to it. She was an admirer of Mentuhotep II's temple and had her own design to mirror it, but on a much grander scale, and, just in case anyone should miss the comparison, ordered it built right next to the older temple. Hatshepsut was always keenly aware of ways in which to elevate her public image and immortalize her name. The mortuary temple achieved both ends. Her reign was one of the most prosperous and peaceful in Egypt's history. There is evidence that she commissioned military expeditions early on, and she certainly kept the army at peak efficiency. But, for the most part, her time as pharaoh is characterized by successful trade, a booming economy, and her many public works projects, which employed laborers from across the nation. One of the magnificent reliefs in the temple is the birth colonnade, depicting the birth of a female pharaoh. She is shown to be the daughter of Amun, who presided over her creation. It also depicted the ceremonies of her coronation. The purpose of these reliefs was to confirm the legitimacy of her status as a female pharaoh. And now we travel to the tomb of Tutankhamun, which was discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter and was nearly intact. With over 5,000 artifacts, it sparked a renewed public interest in ancient Egypt, for which Tutankhamun's mask, now in the Egyptian Museum, remains a popular symbol. The discovery created a worldwide press sensation, and stories spread about a curse on anyone who dared to break into a pharaoh's tomb. He has since the discovery been referred to colloquially as King Tut. There is a long-standing mystery about the curse of King Tut's tomb. Rumor had it that a tablet inside the tomb had a curse on it, and Howard Carter hid the tablet so his workers wouldn't know. This was probably fueled by newspapers seeking sales at the time of the discovery, as it was shown that no curse had actually been found in the tomb, but deaths in succeeding years of various members of Carter's team and real or supposed visitors to the site kept the story alive, especially in cases of death by violence or in odd circumstances. After the abandonment of the Valley of the Kings at the end of the 20th dynasty, kings of the subsequent 2 dynasties were buried in very simple tombs within the temple enclosure of the delta city of Tanis. The last period we will visit is the Ptolemaic Period. The last native pharaoh of Egypt was Nectanebo II, who was pharaoh before the Achaemenids conquered Egypt for a second time. Achaemenid rule over Egypt came to an end through the conquests of Alexander the Great in 332 BC, after which it was ruled by the Hellenic pharaohs of the Ptolemaic dynasty. After Egypt was occupied by the Greeks and later by the Romans, the basic Egyptian concept of the king ruling with the god and the interest of world order continued to be preserved. The Ptolemies' completed temples already began, such as Nectanebo II's Temple of Isis, and built in the traditional Egyptian style. Most of the well-preserved temples were built in this era, including the Temple of Horus at Edfu, the Temple of Dendur, which was commissioned by the Roman Emperor Augustus, the Temple of Kom Ombo, and the Temple of Pelée. In 1960, due to the construction of the Aswan High Dam and the consequent threat posed by its reservoir to numerous monuments and archaeological sites, UNESCO made an international call to save this rich historical legacy. And as a result, 4 temples were donated to countries assisting with the relocation. These temples are the Temple of Tebot, which is now in Madrid, Spain, the Temple of Dendur, which is in New York, the United States, the Temple of Tafi, which is in Leiden, the Netherlands, and the Temple of Elysia, which is in Turin, Italy. We have once again come to the end of another magical journey. I hope that you have been thoroughly entertained, learned some new things about ancient Egyptian architecture, and have found some relaxation in my voice. I have posted a schedule of upcoming videos on my Twitter page as well as Patreon. I hope to see you in our next adventure. Until next time, good night.